The conference hall on Dravik Station hummed with the usual diplomatic chatter, that peculiar sound of a thousand voices trying to sound important while saying absolutely nothing. Ambassador Thulnara of the Vaskrin Collective adjusted her ceremonial headpiece, a gaudy thing that weighed about as much as a small moon, and wondered, not for the first time, why anyone thought galactic peace required this much pageantry. She had been attending these tedious meetings for 3 cycles now, listening to species after species debate trade routes and territorial disputes with all the passion of reciting a grocery list. The humans had been invited this time, their first official appearance since joining the Galactic Assembly 6 months prior. Everyone was curious about them. Of course, the newcomers, the primitives from that backwater blue planet who had somehow stumbled into faster-than-light travel without blowing themselves up. First, they are not what you expect, whispered Counselor Vix beside her, his scales rippling with what she recognized as amusement. I met their delegate yesterday, strange creatures, soft skin, no natural weapons, and they smile when they are uncomfortable. Very confusing. Belnara clicked her mandibles in acknowledgement. She had read the briefings. Humans were classified as a Class 3 species, physically unremarkable, moderate intelligence, short lifespan. Their planet had been racked by constant warfare for most of their recorded history, which was not uncommon for developing civilizations. What was unusual was that they kept showing up to fights they should have run from. The doors at the far end of the hall suddenly burst open, not with the ceremonial slowness protocol demanded, but with actual urgency. Junior Communications Officer stumbled through his breathing apparatus, fogging with panic attack. He gasped, "Raiders! 20 ships dropping out of hyperspace on our position." The room erupted. Delegates scrambled for exits. Ceremonial guards reached for weapons they had not actually fired in decades. And someone, probably a Keelian by the high-pitched shrieking, knocked over a decorative fountain that had been a gift from the Prixian Empire. Water or whatever liquid they filled those things with flooded across the marble floor. Elnara felt her combat implants activate automatically, a cold rush of tactical data flooding her neural pathways. The station's defensive grid was already responding, but the attacking force was substantial. Pirates, most likely. The Krell Brotherhood had been getting bolder lately, hitting soft targets like diplomatic stations that were more simple than fortress. All delegates to the shelters. The station commander's voice boomed over the intercom. "This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." Through the chaos, Elnara spotted the human delegation. There were 3 of them, standing near the western entrance with the kind of stillness that made her combat training scream warnings, while every other species in the room was either fleeing or preparing to fight. The humans were simply watching, calculating. The tallest one, a female with hair the color of rust and eyes like chips of ice, turned to her companions. "Marcus, how long until they breached the outer hull?" The male she addressed, shorter and built like he had been compressed under heavy gravity, did not even glance at a data pad. 17 minutes. Maybe 15, if they focus fire on section 12. That is where the shielding is weakest. "Great," the third human muttered, a wiry man with scars crisscrossing his dark skin. "Just enough time for things to get interesting." "I hate interesting." The female, who Thulnara later learned, was called Captain Reeves, locked eyes with her across the room. Ambassador, your station defense, how many trained soldiers? Elnara felt her throat sacks. Contract, 70, maybe 80, mostly ceremonial guard. This station is supposed to be neutral territory. Supposed to be, Reeves repeated with a laugh that sounded like breaking glass. Yeah, well, supposed to be does not stop. Plasma rounds, she touched a device on her wrist. Jackson Harper Mitchell. Gear up, we have got incoming and the locals are not equipped for this, Captain Elnara said, forcing authority into her voice. Your species has no combat authorization on this station. Galactic protocol clearly states. Protocol, the scarred man interrupted, is about to be the least of our problems. He tilted his head, listening to something on a private comm channel. They are launching boarding pods. Looks like they want something specific from this station, not just a quick raid. Lights flickered somewhere deep in the station's superstructure. Metal groaned. Thulnara felt the artificial gravity hiccup, a nauseating sensation that meant the main generators were being targeted. These were not amateurs. The Krello Brotherhood had planned this. How many pirates? Reeves asked her, voice calm enough to make Belnara's skin crawl. Scans show at least 300 combatants. Vix supplied his own tactical display, projecting holographic data. They are well-armed militarira, weapons probably stolen from Confederation stockpiles. 300, Marcus said and laughed. Actually laughed. Against how many of us right now? Maybe 10 who can actually fight, Reeves said. She was pulling equipment from a case that Thulnara had not noticed before. Compact weapons that looked disturbingly functional, plus whatever help the station commander can scrape together. That is suicide. Thulnara said flatly. We should seal the command center and wait for reinforcements. The nearest battle group can be here in 4 hours. Reeves smiled and understood what Bricks had meant about humans smiling when uncomfortable. It was not a pleasant expression. It was the smile of something that had decided to bite first and worry about consequences later. 4 hours, the captain said. That is plenty of time for these raiders to kill everyone here. Strip the station and jump back to hyperspace. She chambered around in her weapon with a sound like breaking teeth. We do not wait. Well, the first explosion rocked the station, distant but getting closer. Belnara could hear weapons fire. Now the distinctive crack of plasma rifles and the deeper boom of explosive charges. The raiders had breached Section 7, Marcus reported, his eyes focused on something only he could see. Through his neural link, they are pushing hard toward the central hub. If they take that, they control life support and communications. Then we stop them before they get there, Reeves said simply. She looked at Thulnara. Ambassador, get the non-combatants to the shelters now. Everyone else who can hold a weapon, tell them to fall back to Checkpoint Alpha. We will make our stand there. You are not in command here, Thulnara said, but even as she spoke she was already moving. Because the terrifying thing was these humans knew exactly what they were doing. She had seen enough combat veterans to recognize it in their movements, the way they checked angles and cleared corners with their eyes even while standing still. The station's security forces were assembling at Checkpoint Alpha, reinforced corridor junction that Controlled access to 3 major section, 50 guards, maybe 60, looking about as ready for a real fight as decorative plants. Their commanding officer, a Riltan named Corsics, was gesturing at a tactical display with all 4 arms, trying to coordinate defense. We establish a fallback position here, Corsics was saying, and here, and if those fail, we are dead, Reeves interrupted, striding into the command circle like she owned it. You do not have the numbers for a layered defense. You barely have the numbers for a firing line. Corsics bristled, his carapace flushing with angry colors. Human, you have no authority. 17 years frontier Marines, 5 tour in the outer reaches, 2 citations for holding impossible positions. Reeves snapped back. I have got plenty of authority. It just was not written down by a committee. She pointed at the display. They are coming through 3 vectors. You are spreading your forces too thin, trying to cover everything. Pick one corridor, the most defensible. Stack your people there and make it cost them blood for every meter. That will leave the other sections undefended. Yes, Reeves said with that terrible smile again, that is where we come in. Marcus and the scarred man, who someone had called Harper, were already moving. They positioned themselves at the junction of Corridor 9, a narrow passage with good sight lines and only one entrance. 2 humans against 300 raiders seemed like the setup for a very short joke. This is insane, Delara said, but she was pulling her own sidearm, checking the charge. You will be killed. Probably, Harper agreed cheerfully. He was setting up something complicated, involving tripwires and what looked like improvised explosives. But we will be killed slowly and loudly, which means you all get more time to prepare. That is the whole point. The sound of the raiders was getting closer. Now, Bell could hear them communicating in their harsh, guttural language, coordinating their assault. Professional soldiers, not the usual rebel. Someone had hired good talent for this operation. Contact, Marcus said calmly. 40M full combat gear, energy shields, the works. He glanced at Harper. Remember that thing we did on Vargas 7, the stupid thing that almost got us killed? That is the one. Harper grinned. Love it. The first raider rounded the corner. Massive Krello warrior in full battle armor, weapon raised. He got exactly 2 steps into the corridor before Harper's trap triggered. The explosion was not huge, but it was precisely placed, channeling all its force down the narrow passage. The raiders' shields flared, overloaded and failed. Marcus fired once, a single shot that took the warrior in the throat where the armor was weakest. The body had not even hit the ground before Marcus and Harper were moving not forward but sideways into access corridors that probably had not been used in years. The raiders poured into Corridor 9, saw the body in charged. They met empty space and more traps. Harper had rigged the entire corridor, each trap feeding into the next, a cascading nightmare of fire and shrapnel and collapsing bulkheads. The Nara watched through the security feeds and felt her blood go cold. Humans were not fighting, they were hunting. They are circling around, Marcus reported over the comm, not even breathing hard despite having just sprinted through 3 levels of maintenance shafts, trying to flank the main position. Permission to ruin their day granted, Reeves said. She was at Checkpoint Alpha with the main force, directing the station's guards with quick, precise commands. The woman had transformed the disorganized rabble into something that at least looked like a defensive line. But stay mobile, do not let them pin you down. Pinned us, Harper laughed. Ambassador, watch this. The security feeds showed the flanking force, 20 raiders moving in tactical formation through corridor 15. Professional cautious checking corners. They never saw Marcus drop from a ceiling vent behind them, his weapon fired in controlled bursts, 3-round patterns that sang like some kind of lethal music. 5 raiders down before the rest even realized they were under attack. Harper emerged from a side passage, weapon blazing, and the corridor became chaos. The raiders tried to form up, tried to use their superior numbers, but in close quarters against enemies who moved like liquid shadows, numbers meant nothing. They are not soldiers, Brix whispered. Beside Thulnara, they are something else. She knew what he meant. Soldiers followed orders, held positions, fought for objectives. These humans fought like the objective was simply to survive one more second, to make the enemy pay for every breath. They had no respect for proper tactics, no adherence to standard combat doctrine. They just adapted, flowed, killed. The main assault hit Checkpoint Alpha with the force of a collapsing star. 50 raiders at least, all concentrated on breaking through the defensive line. Reeves stood in the center of the formation, not behind her troops, but among them, her weapon singing its deadly song. Hold, she shouted. Do not break formation. Overlapping fields of fire, just like we practiced. We did not practice, one guard yelled back. Well then, improvise. Reeves shot 3 raiders in quick succession. It has been working for us for about 10,000 years. The battle was not elegant. There were no heroic charges, no dramatic duels. It was simply ugly, brutal, desperate violence. The raiders pushed, the defenders held. Bodies piled up in the narrow corridor, making advancement difficult, which was probably part of Reeves's plan. They are pulling back, Corsex reported, his voice tight with disbelief. We held them. First wave, Reeves corrected, reloading. They will be back, probably with heavier weapons now that they know we will actually fight. She touched her comm. Marcus, Harper's status. Flanking force neutralized. Marcus reported, we are moving to Vector 3. They have got a heavy weapons team setting up. They are rude of them, very rude. Harper agreed. There was the sound of gunfire, then an explosion, then Harper's voice again. Never mind, problem solved. Elnara found herself standing beside Reeves, her own weapon in hand, trying to understand what she had just witnessed. The humans had bought them time, yes, but more than that, they had changed the entire psychology of the battle. The raiders had come expecting an easy target, diplomats and ceremonial guards. Instead, they had found something that bit back hard. Why, she asked. Why risk yourselves for a station full of species you barely know? Reeves looked at her, and for a moment the smile was gone. In its place was something ancient and tired and infinitely dangerous. Because we know what it is like to be the ones who need help and do not get it, because someone has to stand in the gap, or the gap just keeps getting wider. She checked her weapon again, and because frankly, Ambassador, we are really, really good at this. The raiders regrouped faster than expected. This time they came with siege equipment, plasma cutters, and breaching charges designed to tear through reinforced walls. Checkpoint Alpha would not hold against another assault. we need to fall back, Corsic said, and this time there was no shame in it, just tactical necessity. Agreed, Reeves said. But we do it in stages, leapfrog pattern, half fall back, while half cover, then switch. She looked at the guards. Can you do that without shooting each other? We will manage, one guard said, and Thilnara felt a spike of pride. They were learning, these ceremonial guards were remembering that once long ago their ancestors had been warriors too. The retreat was controlled chaos. The raiders pushed hard, sensing victory, but every meter they gained cost them. Marcus and Harper appeared at impossible angles, firing and vanishing like ghosts. The main force fell back in ordered ranks, turning every corner into a killing ground, shelter level secure. Reeves reported, all non-combatants accounted for. Now we just have to keep the raiders from getting down here. Just Harper said. Yeah, just no problem. They were down to 35 defenders now, 20 station guards, the 3 humans and 12 volunteers who had decided they would rather fight than hide against 200 remaining raiders who were probably wondering why this simple station assault had turned into the longest day of their lives. They will try the main entrance, Marcus predicted. It is the only way down here. Big enough for a massed assault. We collapse the other access points. Then we make the main entrance a very unhappy place. Reeves said she was setting up firing positions, angling weapons for maximum coverage. They want in, fine, we will give them the warmest welcome in the galaxy. The final assault came with everything the raiders had left. Plasma cannons, rocket launchers, enough firepower to level a small building. They hammered the entrance for 10 minutes straight, turning metal into molten slag, filling the air with smoke and the smell of burning insulation. Then they charged. It should have worked. The defenders were outnumbered, outgunned, exhausted. They had been fighting for 2 hours straight with no reinforcements and no way out. By every tactical calculation, they should have broken. They did not. The humans stood in the center of the defensive line, and something about their presence made breaking impossible. Maybe it was the way they kept fighting. No matter what, maybe it was the simple, stubborn refusal to quit that seemed baked into their genetic code. Whatever it was, it spread. A station guard who had been a clerk yesterday stood shoulder to shoulder with a human and fired until his weapon overheated. Another guard, wounded and bleeding from 3 places, dragged a fallen comrade to safety and then returned to the line. The volunteers fought like veterans because the humans had shown them how. And the raiders broke, not all at once, not with some dramatic surrender. They just stopped. First 1 fell back, then 3, then 10. They had come for an easy target and found a war instead, and whatever they were being paid was not worth it. They are retreating, Corsic said, his voice filled with wonder. By all the stars, they are actually retreating. The reinforcements arrived 40 minutes later. A battle group from the Confederation fleet with enough firepower to sterilize a planet. They found the station battered but intact, defenders wounded but alive, and 3 humans sitting on a pile of rubble, sharing some kind of beverage from a flask. Captain Reeves, the fleet admiral said, his 14 eyes blinking in sequence. We received your distress call. I see you managed to hold. Hold seems like a strong word, Reeves said, taking a sip from the flask. We more sort of refused to fall. Down, humans are stubborn that way. Admiral looked around at the carnage. The broken raiders, the exhausted defenders. I will need a full report. This is unprecedented. 3 humans and a handful of guards held off a force that should have overwhelmed you in minutes. Put it in the report however you want, Harper said, but maybe include a note that humans are terrible at knowing when we are supposed to lose. We keep forgetting to read the part where we give up. Later, after the wounded had been treated and the dead counted, the Nara found Captain Reeves standing at an observation window watching ships jump to hyperspace. The council will want to debrief you, the ambassador said. Understand what happened here? What happened is simple, Reeves said. Without turning, we walked through the fire. We always do. Every species has its specialty, ambassador. Yours is diplomacy. The Kellians are artists. The Prixians are philosophers. She finally looked at Thilnara. Humans, we specialize in refusing to die when someone tells us to. Been doing it for thousands of years. We are not quitting. Now, they are calling you something, Thilnara said. The survivors, the raiders who lived, they have a name for you now. What name? Elnara clicked her mandibles. The sound of respect, ghost of war. They say you appeared from nowhere, struck like death itself, and vanished before they could respond. They say you walk through fire and come out smiling. Reeves did smile then, that dangerous expression that was not quite humor and not quite threat. Good, let them remember, let them tell their friends. Maybe next time someone thinks about attacking a peaceful station, they will remember there might be humans there. She turned back to the window, and maybe they will decide they have better things to do that day. The story spread. Within weeks, every raider group, every pirate fleet, every opportunistic band of mercenaries heard about Dravik Station, about the humans who held an impossible position, about the ghost of war, and they learned 6 months after Dravik Station, Captain Maya Reeves found herself in a situation that made the previous engagement look like a training exercise. The difference being this time she had actually volunteered for the stupidity. The briefing room on the Confederation cruiser Valiant Promise smelled like ozone and recycled air, a combination that reminded her of every military vessel she had ever served on. Admiral Cathvar of Rinthian, whose scales shimmered with tactical displays, stood before a holographic projection that showed a planet burning. Tiruz for the Admiral said, his voice carrying the weight of someone delivering a death sentence. Mining colony population 73,000. The Ravager Collective hit them hard 4 days ago. By the time we got the distress signal, they had already entrenched. Marcus leaned forward, his scarred hands folded on the table. How many hostiles? Best estimate 5,000, maybe more, are using the colonists as shields, which means we cannot simply bombard from orbit. Keithvar's display shifted, showing troop positions. We need boots on the ground, a surgical strike to extract as many civilians as possible before the collective decides they are more trouble than they are worth and starts executing people. Harper whistled low. 5,000 against how many of us? The full assault force will number 800. Once we commit every available soldier from the fleet. The Admiral paused. However, intelligence suggests they have artillery positions in the mountain ranges. Someone needs to take those out. before the main force lands, or we will lose half our troops before they touch ground. The room went silent. Everyone understood what that meant. A small team going in ahead of the main force, sabotaging enemy positions while surrounded by thousands of hostiles. It was the kind of mission that got memorials built, but rarely survivors. How small a team? Reeves asked, already knowing the answer. 12. Operatives, mixed species, best of the best. Keithvar looked directly at her. I want you leading it, Captain. After Dravik Station, your tactical assessment scores increased by 300% across the board. You know how to make impossible work. Impossible only works when you have something to work with, Reeves said, but she was already calculating angles, timing, approach vectors. What is our insertion window? 37 hours. After that, the collective starts moving prisoners to their ships. We lose them forever. The admiral's scales dimmed, showing genuine emotion. I will not order you to take this mission, Captain. The survival rate calculations are frankly optimistic at 12%. Marcus laughed. That sound like breaking stone. 12%. Those are practically Vegas odds. We have worked with worse, much worse. Harper agreed. Remember Kelro's the moon base thing with the gravity failure and the angry locals? That was different. That was only 300 hostiles. Yeah, but they had plasma mortars. These ones have artillery. Same basic concept, just louder. Reeves held up a hand, cutting off the banter. Show me the team roster. I want to know who we are working with. The hologram shifted, displaying faces and service records. 3 Keelthian scouts, their 6-limbed bodies perfect for rapid terrain movement. 2 Vinian heavy weapons specialists, their armored hides capable of absorbing punishment that would kill most species. A Prillian tech expert whose 4 eyes could see electromagnetic spectrums humans could not even imagine. 2 more humans, both with special forces backgrounds that made impressive reading. And finally, a Thexian medic whose people had evolved on a death world that made Earth look like a resort planet. This could work, Reeves said, memorizing faces and capabilities. If, and this is a significant if, we can coordinate movement patterns across 7 different species with 7 different combat doctrines. That is why you are leading, K. Thavar said simply. You demonstrated at Dravik that you can make disparate elements function as a unified force. We need that here, Captain. Those colonists need that. Reeves looked at Marcus and Harper. Both men nodded. No discussion needed. They had been through enough battles together. That communication happened in glances and minute expressions. We will need 48 hours for team integration, she said. Run joint exercises, establish communication protocols, learn how each species moves. Under fire, you cannot just throw 12 strangers together and expect them to function as a unit. You have 36 hours. The Admiral countered. I am sorry, Captain, but time is not our ally here. The Ravagers are consolidating there. Hold. Every hour we delay costs lives. Then we better not waste any, Reeves said, standing. Marcus, Harper with me. We have got a crash course in multi-SEs tactical coordination to design, and not enough time to make it pretty. The next 36 hours blurred together in a haze of training exercises, equipment checks, and very little sleep. The team assembled in Cargo Base 7, a space large enough to simulate combat conditions without actually destroying anything. Important. The three Kellyan scouts, sisters named Vix, Nix, and Pix, moved. Like liquid mercury, their 6 limbs, allowing them to traverse terrain in ways that made human parkour look clumsy. The Vinthian heavy specialists, brothers called Thor and Grell, carried weapons that weighed more than Harper and could punch through starship hulls. The Prelian tech, who went by the unpronounceable name that roughly translated to Spark, could hack systems by touching them, their nervous system somehow interfacing directly with electronics. The 2 human operators, Lieutenant Zai and Sergeant Kim, had served together in places the military did not officially acknowledge, and the Thexian medic, Vex, carried enough medical knowledge in their multilobed brain to resurrect the recently dead, which on a Thexian death world was apparently a Tuesday. All right, Reeves said, standing before the assembled team. Let me be absolutely clear about something. This mission should not work. The numbers are against us, the terrain is against us, and time is definitely against us. We are going into a situation where 12 of us need to somehow disable artillery positions defended by hundreds of enemies, then extract without getting killed, all while the main force stages an assault that will draw every hostile on the planet toward us. So a normal Tuesday, Kim said with a slight smile. Exactly, Reeves agreed, which means we do not fight fair, we do not fight honorably, we fight smart, we fight mean, and we fight to win. Every species here has different strengths. Our job is to make those strengths multiply each other instead of getting in each other's way. She activated a holographic display showing the target planet. Tyros 4 has a thin atmosphere, high gravity, and temperature extremes that range from pleasant to lethal depending on time of day. The artillery positions are here, here, and here. 3 points lit up in the mountain range. Each position has approximately 200 defenders, heart bunkers, and enough firepower to turn our landing force into smoking craters. How do we approach? Vix asked, her voice carrying the melodic quality of her species. The terrain offers little cover. We do not approach on the ground, Reeves said. We drop from low orbit, use the mountain thermals to glide in silently. The Kellyan scouts lead established positions, spark jams their communications and sensor arrays. The Vinthians provide overwhelming firepower. When we go loud, humans handle coordination and improvisation because, let us face it, that is what we do best. Vex keeps us alive when things go wrong. When things go wrong, Thorn rumbled, his voice like grinding boulders. Not if, when, always when, Reeves confirmed. Murphy's Law is universal apparently, so we plan for everything to fail and then we adapt. That is the human way. And starting now, it is our way. The drop was beautiful and terrifying. 12 figures falling through the thin atmosphere of Tyros 4 thermal suits, keeping them from freezing while gravity tried its best to turn them into smears. On the landscape, the Kellyan scouts spread their limbs, catching air currents humans could barely detect, guiding the team toward the first target. They landed 3 km from artillery position Alpha, a designation that sounded much more official than the reality. It was a cluster of massive guns pointed at the sky, surrounded by prefabricated bunkers and roughly 200 very alert Ravagers. Spark, how long to disable their sensors? Reeves whispered into the comm, her voice barely audible even to herself. Already done, the Prelian responded. They are blind to electronic surveillance, visual spotting only now. Keelian sisters scout the perimeter. I want guard positions, patrol patterns. Weak points, the three sisters vanished into the rocky terrain like they had been born to it. Humans were good at many things, but stealth in alien environments was not one of them. Fortunately, they had teammates who specialized in exactly that. 12 guards visible from this position. Vix reported patrol rotation every 8 minutes. There is a gap in coverage on the eastern approach, approximately 47 seconds long. 47 seconds to cross 100 m of open ground, Harper muttered. Tight. Then we make it work, Reeves said. Kim, you are with me. Marcus, Harper. Vinthians, you set up overwatch positions here and here. When we breach, you provide covering fire. Make it loud. Make it confusing, and for all our sakes, make it count. The infiltration was textbook perfect. Right up until the moment it was not. They crossed the gap, neutralized 2 sentries with silent efficiency, and were halfway to the command bunker when a Ravager stumbled out of a maintenance shed, looked directly at them, and opened his mouth to shout. Kim moved faster than thought, her blade finding the hostile's throat before sound could emerge, but the body falling made noise. Metal clattering against stone, and suddenly alarms were screaming. So much for stealth, Jiao said, raising his weapon. Plan B is always the same, Reeves said, triggering the signal. Controlled chaos, go loud. The mountain exploded with violence. Thor and Grell opened fire with their massive weapons, each shot sounding like the universe cracking open. Ravagers scattered, trying to form defensive positions, but Marcus and Harper were already moving, flanking, creating crossfire lanes that turned the artillery position into a killing ground. The Kellian sisters became blurs of motion, attacking from unexpected angles, their natural agility making them nearly impossible to track. Spark was somewhere in the electronic systems, turning the Ravagers' own technology against them, making targeting computers lie and communication arrays broadcast static. Reeves, Zio, and Kim pushed toward the command bunker, moving through enemy fire that should have killed them 3 times over. A plasma round scored across Reeves's armor, melting composite material and burning skin beneath. She barely noticed, too focused on the objective, on the artillery pieces that needed to be disabled before they could target the incoming fleet. They breached the command bunker with explosive charges, the concussion rattling Reeves's teeth. Inside, 6 Ravager officers were trying desperately to coordinate a defense that no longer existed. They looked up, saw 3 humans covered in soot and blood and determination, and in that moment, Reeves saw them make the calculation. Fight or flee. They chose poorly. 15 seconds later, the bunker was secured and Spark was uploading viral code into the artillery control systems. The massive guns began turning, no longer pointing at the sky, but at each other, at bunkers, at ammunition dumps. Fire in the holes, Spark announced calmly. Suggest immediate evacuation. They ran. The artillery position tore itself apart in a chain reaction of explosions that lit up the night sky like a miniature sun. Behind them, 200 Ravagers scattered or died. Their defensive position transformed into a crater. Position Alpha neutralized. Reeves reported, checking her team. Minor injuries, nothing critical. Vex was already working their multiple limbs, distributing medicine and stabilizing wounds with practice deficiency. 2 targets remaining, 17 hours until main assault. Then we keep moving, Marcus said, reloading his weapon before they realize what hit them and get smart about defending the other positions. They hit artillery position Beta 4 hours later, this time with the benefit of experience. The Ravagers had heard about Alpha's destruction and were nervous, jumpy, shooting at shadows, which meant when the Kelsian sisters created actual shadows in the wrong places, the defenders wasted ammunition on phantoms, while the real attack came from 3 other directions simultaneously. Position Beta fell in 23 minutes. Coordinated strike that felt almost choreographed. The team was learning each other's rhythms, anticipating movements, covering weaknesses without being asked. They were becoming what Reeves had promised, a unified force that was greater than the sum of its parts. Position Gamma was different. The Ravagers had learned, had adapted, had concentrated forces. 600 hostiles now defended the final artillery position, and they were dug in like ticks. We cannot take that with 12 people, Thor said flatly, stating the obvious. Even surprise will not overcome those numbers. No, Reeves agreed, studying the layout, but we do not need to take it. We just need to make it useless. She outlined the plan, a combination of guerrilla tactics and sheer audacity that made even Marcus raise an eyebrow. They would not assault the position. They would make the Ravagers assault themselves. Spark would hack into their communication networks, feed false information about a massive attack coming from the east. The Kelsian scouts would create evidence of that attack. Movement, noise, controlled explosions. The Vinthians would provide actual artillery fire from a distance, making the fake threat feel real. And while the Ravagers committed their forces to the imaginary eastern assault, the humans would sabotage the artillery pieces themselves, rendering them permanently inoperable. This plan is insane, Vex observed, their multiple voice harmonics creating an eerie echo. Completely, Reeves agreed. That is why it might work. It worked better than it should have. The Ravagers bought the deception entirely, committing 400 soldiers to repel an attack that did not exist. Reeves, Zio, and Kim slipped through the chaos, planted charges on each artillery piece with mechanical precision, and were gone before anyone noticed. The explosions came simultaneously, 12 massive guns transforming into twisted metal sculptures. The Ravager commander realized too late. He had been deceived, his forces out of position, his defenses compromised. All artillery positions neutralized. Reeves reported to the Valiant Promise. Clear for main assault, confirmed. Captain Admiral Kethar responded, and Reeves could hear the relief in his voice. Landing craft launching now. Get your team to the extraction point. You have done more than enough. Not yet, Reeves said, watching through her scope as Ravager forces began retreating toward the colony proper. They are falling back to the civilian center. If we let them regroup there, the rescue becomes a bloodbath. Captain, your mission is complete. Do not risk your team further. Reeves looked at her people, these soldiers from 7 different species, who had trusted her with their lives. Permission to pursue, Admiral. We can keep them off balance until the main force arrives. A long pause, then Granted, but Captain, 12% survival odds. Just drop to 5, do not make me write condolence letters. We will do our best to avoid that, Reeves said and signaled her team. Forward they became ghosts again, appearing at the edges of Ravager. Formations striking and vanishing, never staying long enough for retaliation. The Kellyan sisters sabotaged vehicles. The Vinthians created ambushes. Spark turned every electronic system into a liability. The humans coordinated, adapted, and generally made themselves the most annoying problem the Ravagers had ever encountered. By the time the main Confederation force landed, the Ravager collective was scattered, disorganized, and thoroughly demoralized. They had come to Tyros 4, expecting easy prey, and found instead an enemy that refused to follow any predictable pattern. The battle for the colony proper lasted 3 hours, with artillery neutralized and their command structure disrupted. The Ravagers broke. Some surrendered, most fled to their ships and jumped to hyperspace, deciding that whatever loot they might gain was not worth facing humans and their impossibly coordinated allies. The colonists were saved, not all of them. There had been casualties, losses that Reeves felt like physical weight, but 70,000 lives continued when they should have ended. That had to count for something. In the aftermath, Admiral Keithvar found Reeves sitting on a piece of rubble, watching medics tend to civilians. Her armor was scorched, her face was covered in soot, and she had not slept in 48 hours. The Council has a question, the Admiral said, settling his massive form beside her. They want to know how 12 soldiers achieved what should have required a full battalion. They want to understand the human tactical doctrine that made this possible. Reeves laughed, tired and raw. There is no doctrine, Admiral. There is just the understanding that when something needs doing and the odds say it cannot be done, someone has to be stupid enough to try anyway. Humans have been that someone for our entire history. We are good at it because we have had lots of practice. The Ravagers are calling your team. Something now, Kevar continued. Word spreads fast among mercenary groups. They say you are touched by death itself, that you walk through fire and emerge unscathed. We are not unscathed, Reeves said, touching the burn on her side that Vex had patched but still hurt like fury. We just keep walking anyway, ghost of war, the Admiral said. That is what they call you, all of you. Your entire team has earned that title, first at Dravik. Now here. He paused. The Council wants to form a rapid response unit built around Multiesi's integration and unconventional tactics. They want you to lead it. Reeves looked at her team, scattered around the landing zone. Marcus was helping Thor repair his weapon. Harper was teaching Kim some kind of card game, while the Kellyan sisters watched in fascination. Zio and Spark were comparing notes on electronic warfare. Vex was simply resting, their multiple eyes closed in what might have been sleep. They will follow you anywhere, Cathar observed. You showed them how to be more than they were. That is rare, Captain. They showed themselves, Reeves corrected. I just gave them permission to be dangerous. She stood, every muscle protesting. Tell the Council I will consider their offer. But right now I am going to find something that passes for coffee in this galaxy, drink about a gallon of it, and maybe sleep for 3 days straight. Understood, Captain. The Admiral stood. As well, for what it is worth, the survival rate for your mission was calculated at 12%. You brought back 100% of your team alive. And functional, that is not luck, that is something else entirely. That is humans, Reeves said simply. We do not know when to quit, so we just keep going until the universe blinks. First, she started walking toward the shuttle that would take them back to the Valiant Promise. Usually it blinks. Eventually, the story spread farther. The ghost of war became legend, whispered about in mercenary bars and pirate havens. That team of 12 who had broken the Ravager. Collective, the soldiers who walked through fire and came out the other side, still swinging, and across the galaxy on 100 worlds and 1,000 stations. People learned a valuable lesson. Humans were soft, yes, physically unremarkable. Yes, short-lived and fragile. Absolutely. But they had one quality that made them dangerous beyond measure. They refused to know when they were beaten. They would stand in impossible positions and make the impossible happen through sheer stubborn will. They would walk through fire, earning their title one battle at a time, and if you were lucky, very lucky, they would be walking through that fire toward someone else and not toward